This is Medic Life TV, a video podcast for EMS professionals with your host, John Newton.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Veterans, or our Salute to Veterans edition this week. Yes, my name is John, and I'm Newton, and I'm your host here at Medic Life TV. So let's get the old music out of the way there. So this week, it's a little different. For those of you watching, first off, let me say thank you for watching, tuning in again on Thursday night to watch me live. What we're going to try to do is, if I can make this work, maybe technology hopefully will be my friend. But what I'm going to do is just play for you guys the interviews that I was fortunate enough to record this week with some of the veterans out there in EMS. This will be posted up live, or I should say as a watch later in YouTube, as I always do. It may look a little different from this, and that's okay. But first, let me get started by reminding you guys, and my daughter says that I'm supposed to point down to the bottom of the screen and go, hey, subscribe here. No, I'm not going to do that to you guys. But yeah, please do subscribe so you can get the latest updates. All my contact information is in the description of this cast. If you guys would like to send me questions, just like to chit chat, maybe send some shout outs and say thanks to some folks for serving, you can do that either in the comments section of this live cast, or you can send me tweets at jnewton_DCME. So the first one I'm going to show you guys is a video the interview in progress with Mr. Jeremy Gassert. He served his time in the Air Force. So let's see if we can make this happen here. I said I could. So we're going to see how this works. So without further ado, guys, here we go.
And John, thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate this opportunity to talk to your audience a little bit. Well, like you said, I'm a paramedic in Pennsylvania, but I started out as an EMT in Pennsylvania when I was in high school, and then right after high school, I joined the Air Force and decided to become a medic in the military. And I served in the Air Force from 2002 to 2011, and did a variety of different things. The Air Force medical services are pretty diverse in the roles that we could fill. So I actually started working out on a telemetry floor, and then I went from a telemetry floor to doing education and training, where I ran the ACLS and BLS program for Wilford Hall Medical Center, which at the time was a level 1 trauma center in South Central Texas. And then from there, I did a deployment in Iraq, Afghanistan, came back, worked in the ER for a little while, and then I moved out to New Mexico, where I was an instructor at the U.S. Air Force Pararescue Combat Rescue Officer School for about 2 years before I ended up getting out and kind of reintegrating into civilian life. So yeah.
Cool. Before we started, you and I were kind of chatting, and you were telling me a little bit about it. And I'll tell you, my background in the military, I'm a Marine, and I was a firefighter in the Marine Corps, so we didn't do medical. I am I worked as a civilian here, as a civilian paramedic at Fort Gordon. I live near Fort Gordon here in Augusta, Georgia. And I'm familiar with Army medics and a little bit about their job. Kind of tell me how the Air Force works theirs, and explain it to everybody how the Air Force is maybe the same or even different than the Army medics.
So when most people think of the Army medic, the first that comes to mind is the 68 Whiskey, which I'm pretty sure their job title is even combat medic. And the Army does a lot of the same things that we do. They still work in the hospitals and things like that when they're in garrison, especially if they're assigned to a medical unit or whatever. In the Air Force, like I said, I started off on the telemetry floor. A lot of the people that I went to tech school with ended up working in clinics, doing primary care and that kind of stuff. Had a couple of friends that worked as ICU technicians. So it was, as long as you went to a facility or a base that had a large facility, you could work anywhere in the hospital.
So what was your tell me a little bit about your initial training, and maybe for those people who have not been in the military, that have actually been through basic, intermediate, advanced EMT, and maybe even paramedic school, kind of compare that for us and make it make sense to everybody.
So my tech school training took place in Wichita Falls, Texas. And it was approximately 4 months in duration, I believe. It's now the school is part of the tri-service. It's Army, Navy, and Air Force down in San Antonio, Texas. That's yeah, that's now they have the tri-service. Everybody's kind of conjoined to save money. My training, was primarily, it was kind of weird. There was a block of training that was the National Registry course. We did a National Registry EMT course. I was able to skip that block and just test out because I was already an EMT coming into the Air Force. But the majority of the training really focused more on sort of like LVN or LPN sort of training in hospital care, wound care, EKGs, drawing labs, starting IVs, all that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit, that EMT block was just one small portion of it.
So it's kind of like a EMT basic plus. You had a little bit of basic EMT versus some stuff from paramedics, some from kind of nursing stuff, this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You guys could do like sutures and things like that too, right? And
that was something as part of your upgrade training, because the way the Air Force does it, you have different levels. You start out at the 3 level, and then you go to a 5 level, 7 level, 9 level. So on and so forth. Then once you have your 9, once you make like Chief Master Sergeant, which is E9, then you can sort of like become like a 00 category, which was like the superintendent for the career field and stuff like that. As you sort of progress, so like a 3 level isn't expected to know how to do sutures, but like a 5 and a 7 level are expected to know how to suture and do a few additional tasks as well. And then like specialized tasks within the whatever clinical setting that you happen to be working in. When I got back from Iraq, I decided that, I want to be a paramedic. And so I put myself through paramedic school. They paid for it, don't get me wrong, under the tuition assistance. But, I put myself through paramedic school my own time. And then I was later able to use those skills because the Air Force actually created a specific designation for paramedics, what we call the Special Experience Identifier, which was really nice because then when I deployed, I knew that when I was deployed, I knew that my paramedic skills would be put to use, and I wouldn't just be stuck, cleaning out trays and giving bed baths all the time. So.
And I know this is always a touchy subject when we talk with veterans and stuff like that. But tell me about some of your experiences while you were hanging out in theater, so to speak, in Afghanistan or Iraq.
So I served in Balad, Iraq, at LSA Anaconda in 2005. Got there in January 2005, basically a few months after the whole Fallujah thing had gone down. While I was there, we actually treated roughly 4,500 patients, both U.S. military, coalition, Iraqi civilians, Iraqi military. We even took care of the bad guys too. So It was a lot of people running through. We were a major hub. The two major hubs were Baghdad and Balad, as far as like big hospitals and getting people moved out. So they would come to us, and then they would go to off to Germany, or back to their unit or whatever.
So is this like a clinic type setting, or did you guys run kind of like a makeshift ambulance service on post, or how did this work?
So the hospital itself, I mean, although it was in tents, it wasn't in tents, it was physically in a tent. It was basically the equivalent of a level 1 trauma center here in the States, just on a much sort of smaller scale, in a much sort of just a different setting all around. Most level 1 trauma centers don't have mortars and rockets landing next to them on a regular basis. So, Blackhawks landing on their helipad on around the clock. So, again, now I believe they have a brick and mortar structure that's set up there. But while I was there, we were basically big GP medium tents, and they were all linked together. We had everything. We had CT scans, we had X-ray, we had multiple ORs, we had a big trauma bay. We had a couple of wards, got a couple of ICUs. So it was a pretty interesting stuff. And then when I went to Afghanistan, I actually ended up at a smaller hospital, and I was attached to the Army with the 96 Combat Support Hospital out of Washington State. So that was kind of a different dynamic. It was a smaller facility, but a lot of the same capabilities. CT scan, X-ray. But in Afghanistan, we were focusing. Well, actually in Iraq too. It's all basically the mission there is damage control surgery, save lives, and doesn't have to be pretty. Just get them alive and then get them out to Germany. Keep them alive, get them to Germany, and then they would undergo additional surgeries there. And then from there, they would go off to, Walter Reed or something like that, or another hospital here in the States. So, yeah. Yeah.
I know when I worked at Fort Gordon, we've got a lot of those guys that would come from in theater to Lahnstuhl, and then they would come to us. And I think they spread them out, and I don't really know how they figure out how they're going to spread them out, because some of them will come straight like here. And you were talking about those guys in Washington State, since all this has kind of been going on, it's really odd that for whatever reason, their group has probably sustained, from the Army's aspect, probably the largest amount of casualties from that region, the people that are attached to those units that live in that region. And it's kind of interesting that you said you were attached to them. I got a couple of friends here that were attached to them, and they talk about how they've lost. We got one guy, I'm actually in a running group here. It's called Wear Blue, Run to Remember. And it was, you may be familiar with them. They were actually established because of to basically remember those guys from there in the Washington State area, because they lost almost everybody in their whole company. There was just a handful of them over about a year's span. So it was just really, it's kind of interesting that you were in some of those areas. And I guess my question to you now would be is, after you say you started out as being an EMT, maybe in high school, and you went through the military, and so you had a different kind of experience going through getting your training and things like that. Do you think that your military experience has helped you or made a difference in how you interact with your patients and stuff?
Absolutely, 100%. When I got out of the military, I moved back to my hometown, and I got a job as a paramedic in a rural county in upstate Pennsylvania doing 911. And it was a little bit different. It took definitely some getting used to, and not being in that military environment, and interacting with other people. But the experience that I had. My experience was somewhat unique at the time for the Air Force, because when I went to Afghanistan, I was going out on combat missions. And because I was a paramedic, a lot of times if we had an ICU patient that needed to be medevac to, another facility like Bagram, for example, a lot of times I would get on the helicopter and kind of manage these ICU patients for transport and stuff like that. which at the time there was a few Air Force medics that were doing that. Now it's more and more common. The Air Force is picking up a lot of that slack, but you know, so now I'm doing ground critical care transport in the Philadelphia area, and I can tell you, it's my experience. You know, I can walk in saying, you know, yes, I've actually, you know, criped people. I've done, you know, a lot of these different skills, pericardial synthesis, things that we're doing now on the ground. You know, the fact that we just introduced ketamine into our protocols earlier this year. You know, I have a ton of experience administering ketamine in the combat environment. So, you know, that level of that comfort level, you know, that I had earlier with it is translating directly into what we're doing today. Playing with transexamic acid, we just added transexamic acid to our protocols as well for traumatic bleeds and stuff like that. So, and
I just want to stop you here. Just for those of you who may not be familiar, that's watching this or whatever, what he's talking about, and you can look it up, and I'll put a link for you guys in the description, and you can kind of look it up. It's also known as TXA, and it's basically to help with clotting and things like that. And we are getting it here in the U.S., and it's spreading. It's slow, but we're going to start seeing it probably more and more common in EMS. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You know, the other thing too, like 2007, you know, we accidentally ordered an entire case of King Airways when I was in Afghanistan. I had no idea what they were. They showed up, and I was like, "Whoa, what are these?" But I was able to get in contact with the company, and they were able to kind of give me some pointers and stuff like that. And you know, so again, like here in the States in 2007, not a lot of people were playing around with King.
Hey guys, so yeah, that's interview in progress with Mr. Jeremy Gassert there. Just wanted to take a few seconds and say thank you guys for watching and continuing to watch. I'm going to let this particular interview play to the finish, and then we'll chit-chat a little bit. Again, send in those questions. If you want to send a little shout out, say thank you, or have somebody's name mentioned live here, say thank you for serving, or maybe you want to pop in. Don't be scared to do so. So we'll get back at it, guys, with Mr. Gassert here.
The King Airway. And now everybody's got them, you know. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention tourniquet use and all that other kind of stuff. You know, the military, we basically rewrote the book on tourniquets.
Yeah, we've changed the way we look at tourniquets now. We used to say, "Oh, that's a last-ditch effort," and now it's like one of the first things we do.
It absolutely was. If I ever had a patient who'd been shot or a victim of an IED explosion or something like that, if I saw bleeding on an extremity, I immediately slapped the tourniquet on as high up on that extremity as I possibly could. Let's get that bleeding controlled immediately. Focus on the rest of the assessment, and then once I get back down to that extremity in my assessment, then I can actually expose it, look at it, determine if the tourniquet is actually needed. I could take it down to a pressure dressing if that's all I needed. I could remove it completely if, you know, there really wasn't anything major there at all. You know, so the military doctrine towards tourniquets is still a little bit different than most civilian EMS protocols.
We don't remove them.
Exactly, yeah. And so, you know, the idea being is that potentially I could be stuck with the patient for a couple of hours before we could get casualty evacuation set up for these guys. But that really, I never really ran into any of those particular scenarios where I had to sit on the ground for a long time with a particular patient. But yeah, no, I was privileged to be thrown into these situations. You know, that they always ask me, do you want to go do this? And I was like, absolutely, why not? You know, that's, you know, it was exciting, it was fun, it was interesting, and it absolutely contributed to my career later on down the road. So.
Well, this week it's been the Marine Corps birthday. It's Veterans Day. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say, you know, thank you for your service. Definitely thank you for talking to me about some of it today. I definitely would like to have you back and maybe talk a little bit more about military medicine versus how we do things today in EMS. And I don't know. There's definitely some stuff that we could talk about, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we talk a lot when we go to these expos and stuff like that anyway. So, But anytime you need me, I'm here. And again, thank you, sir, for your service. And happy birthday to the Marine Corps, because, Yeah.
So I guess my final, I'm going to let you just make the final statement here, and then we'll end this interview. Final thoughts, advice to anybody who is looking to go into the medical field in the military. What are your thoughts?
There are endless possibilities for anybody who is looking to join the military in one of the medical career fields. It doesn't, and of course I'm a little biased. I usually tell people, hey, check out the Air Force. But between the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, there are a multitude of career fields that involve medicine, all the way from X-ray techs, lab technicians, respiratory therapy, and then like the jobs that I did and what some of my friends did as combat medics in the Army. And then if you're really one of those like Type A personalities, super high speed, I want to just go out and save lives and blow stuff up, there's always the pararescue career field, which is part of the U.S. Air Force Special Forces, or Special Operations Command, rather, that does the combat search and rescue. And I was, like I said, I was an instructor at their schoolhouse for a few years, and the best group of guys ever to work with. They work hard, but they play hard and have a good time. And it was eye-opening experience interacting with them and playing around with them. I got to do some really cool stuff that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. So yeah, absolutely. There are multiple opportunities, and the best part about it is they pay you to go to school, basically. You're gonna walk out with a lot of the equivalent civilian certificates and things like that, which I know is a big issue right now. I know a lot of states are sort of giving EMTs coming out of the military a hard time and getting their civilian credentials, even though they should be coming out with national registry certificates, because the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy all do national registry certificates. So I'm not really sure what it's probably a bureaucratic issue, but like I have friends that went to were respiratory therapists in the Air Force, came out with all the same civilian certificates and training, and then you use your GI Bill, you go get some college credits, and now you have a degree on top of all that. So it's an excellent way to get your feet planted firmly in the ground, and you're going to get a ton of experience, and that's what employers are looking for when they come out. So you're not going to be starting off on the bottom of the civilian world. So yeah, my advice is, if you're interested in medicine, absolutely look at the military. It was the best experience of my life, and if I could do it all over again, I would absolutely do it all over again. So,
well, all right, sir. So that was Mr. Jeremy Gasser, and again, thank you, sir, for taking the time and hanging out with me to do the interview. Enjoyed talking to you a little before, and even chatting a little after. So I guess at this point, what I'm going to do is just remind you guys that you can send in questions, and you can tweet those to me at JNewton_DCME. That's probably about the best way to do it right now. My name is John Newton. If I haven't told you guys already, I am the host here at Medic Life. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pick up with Mr. Russ, a man who has been in EMS quite a number of years and is such an outstanding guy. You only need to know him by one name. So here is the interview with Mr. Russ.
Afternoon or evening or morning, whatever's appropriate. I just celebrated Veterans Day, and for me, it is kind of special. My father and all my uncles were veterans. My wife was a military brat child, so my father-in-law was active duty and a veteran. My daughter joined the reserves to get her education, so she's a veteran, as is her husband. So we got plenty of them around the area. I originally joined the Army straight out of high school to work for a college career, and upon enlistment, chose X-ray as my training field. You got to remember the time frame here. We're talking 1966. So Vietnam was going on, and the draft was very active. So,
sorry. So you were not drafted. You actually.
No, I enlisted when I was 17.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, when I got out, I couldn't even have a drink after my 3 years. But I got my original basic training as an infantry down in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I'm originally from Chicago, so that was kind of a culture temperature.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a different accent there. So yeah.
People tell me I sound like Bob Newhart, but I don't know. I know Emily is not who I go to bed with every night. I do know that part. But after basic training,
a lot of our viewers are probably not going to get that, Russ.
well, they're too young. I know.
Yeah.
But the military training is at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, right outside of San Antonio. So you take the basic corpsman training, which would be the equivalent of EMT basic, and then the specialized training. I took my X-ray training there. That's all classroom, that's all didactic. Did the clinical training at Walter Reed, 1,000 bed hospital at the time in DC, and then was assigned to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which doesn't sound overly exciting, but it was a good duty station. It was a fairly new hospital, and other than the prison, the Army Command General Staff College is there. So most of the patients were the wives or the children of the young people attending it. The prison had all their own prisoners to take care of their medical needs. But,
so we were talking a little bit before we started this interview, and I was sort of kind of getting some background information. Tell us a little bit more about when you had told me you had to kind of do some travel across Vietnam to get to that final destination there. And you were telling me how you initially basically started your quote-unquote EMS career in the middle of the Tet Offensive. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Tet Offensive started while I was home on my 30-day leave before I went to Vietnam. And so everybody's telling me you're going to a large air-conditioned hospital right outside of Saigon, 44th of that. And we landed at Tan Son Snu, Vietnam. Tet Offensive started while I was home, watching everybody run through the streets in Saigon. And the names for the 44th of that were called out. Mine wasn't in there. And because I was long named, they tend to spell it. So I got reassigned. Well, I ended up going by airplane to Nha Trang, Vietnam, which was way north, and spent a day there. That was the battalion headquarters, and they sent me to the company headquarters by the back of a truck. I've been in Vietnam 3 days. They hand me a box of ammo and my weapon, and I'm in the back of the truck, and that's it. You know, really got that heavy response going for that long ride. Got to the company headquarters, and then I was assigned to one half of a platoon. So then I traveled by helicopter. Almost ended up being due east of Saigon, about where I started, with a small group of people assigned to 101st Airborne. And the place was called Landing Zone Day. And it was just south of a little town called Pantheat. And when I got there, there was the 101st Airborne and a little medic group, 20, 30 of us there. And even though I was a quote X-ray tech, 90% of my time, if not more, was spent as a medic, and that's where I fine-tuned to get my clinical in trauma as a paramedic to use later on. But skills such as suturing was you waited until someone intoxicated came in, and that was your training aid. IVs were pretty much the same way. Now the time frame, I got to remember, most of the people in the military were drafted because they worked in college. Some of the people had the option of joining the military or going to prison. So this is kind of joking with. And what amazed me, here were people that didn't even graduate from grade school, and they're starting IVs, and they're good at it. Because when you're doing 70, 80, 100 a day, you get pretty skilled at it.
You guys went by the see one, do one, teach one method?
That was it. That was it. The group we had, we had like one pharmacist, one lab tech, one X-ray tech, everybody else was medic. And we had 2 ambulances. So I converted 3/4 ton trucks. And assigned with us were 2 dust-off helicopter units. So basically, they picked them up off the field. We triaged and stabilized, and then they went on to one of the other hospitals by helicopter also.
For our younger generation, you keep saying dust off, but you're talking UH-1 November Huey helicopter.
Right. We had eventually, besides the dust off, we had an assault helicopter come along with
Okay.
Yeah. And we were playing Huey just for troop transport to the 101st Airborne there. So normally we waited till the dust off brought the patients in. But when there was a large combat issue, we would jump on a regular helicopter and go out and pick people up too. Now, the medical staff, if you would, was supposed to be a trauma surgeon. That would make sense in a big clothing company. We had a dentist. And the dentist also learned to be a physician. But the physicians we had there, we started with an ophthalmologist who was very sharp. He did do a lot of OJT also. The ophthalmologist was replaced by a urologist. The urologist left, we then had a pediatrician. And when the pediatrician left, we had a family practice guy from down south who never really got going. We're talking a match type facility here. And he expected everyone to be in uniform, and we're going to have an hour of recreational activity, and we're going to show up for formations. He didn't last long.
So he was more of a by-the-book military kind of guy. Huh?
Yeah, and of course they promoted him to an administrative position, over our unit.
Yeah.
But it was one of the unique things for me, learning experience. Like, you got to remember, for our younger people, the Civil Rights Act didn't pass until 1964. So we had a large number of people, and some of them hadn't quite gotten the concept of integration yet, from where they were down home. It didn't take long for everybody to learn that everybody on our side was the same. They all wore green. They all bled red.
Yeah.
And everybody was a brother,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but you're actually getting a little feedback. Yeah, well, every time you talk, it sort of kind of vibrates a little.
I saw the current hair traction splint that a lot of the people know started as a rigid Thomas splint. And it was just a metal contraption. You took gravats. You didn't have Velcro, didn't have elastic. You took gravats and you made a sling out of that, and you made a windlass. There was no spring. You made a windlass with a stick, and that's like put traction in on fracture fever.
So the training that you got before you went over there, and we're talking late 60s, and a lot of EMS training was not standard. Well, EMS training kind of almost did not exist. It was just whatever training you got possible. But how do you think that it compared to some of the more modern day EMS training?
It's a total difference between night and day. And not only EMS training, but the X-ray training that I had, we went from people teaching because they've been in the business for a while, not because they necessarily were good instructors. And they originally they read a lot of overhead, put on the wall. Then we progressed to reading 35mm slides. And now some people still read PowerPoint slides. But as far as educators, I didn't see that until I joined the paramedic program in the early 80s.
So when you got out, did you stay in EMS or did you kind of go a different route in healthcare?
Well, when I got out, I had to finish some of my time in an X-ray school because my time in Vietnam didn't count, so I didn't have a radiologist there. So I enrolled and I came to Omaha, Nebraska to go to a great university. They had a degree in X-ray. And after I moved here, I looked at their tuition, I looked at the GI Bill, and that wasn't going to happen for a long time. So I finished my X-ray training, but my military background got me a job as an orderly. Now, those days were orderlies for nurse aides. Today they're certified nursing assistant. And I made a whopping $1.65 an hour. Now, I had an apartment, I had a vehicle, and I partied. So I don't know where I'm wasting my money now. But
well, that's probably an equation to today's standards of making like 12, 15 bucks an hour now too. So.
Yeah, life was much easier then. But,
cheaper anyway. I don't know about easier, but cheaper.
Cheaper. Finished my X-ray training, and the school I graduated from, they hired me back to be an instructor, and did that for a while, and then went to the VA administration, as a matter of fact. Worked at the VA for a while, and worked my way up to work in a cath lab, and I missed the EMS. I mean, X-ray was, here's an ample, take an X-ray of an apple. Here's a pear, take a picture of an apple. There's no critical thinking that I had. And I had a lot of skill and experience I thought was being wasted, especially looking around at some of the not to pick on nurses, but the nursing personnel that I worked with. And I'm thinking back to these people's grade school education that had more practical skill because of numbers.
Yeah.
So managed exposure. Yeah, that's what it is. And luckily, knew just the right people in the right place at the right time, but they tried a accelerated paramedic program. Up until that time, just about everybody was a paid firefighter, EMT basic. We started the day after Labor Day. We were done the day before Christmas. So straight didactic.
And was this through a college? Was this through a hospital or what?
Well, at that time, the paramedic program was part of the.
So thanks, guys. If you've just joined us recently, we are watching a interview with Russ, and he's talking about his years of service since being an Army medic during Vietnam. So if you just joined us, thank you, and enjoy the interview.
Of the hospital that was attached with the university.
What year was this?
This was back in 1981.
So National Registry was just a rumor.
Well, it became real. I mean, the classroom we got thrown out of all kinds of places because we were the paramedic students.
Yeah.
So classes were held around schedules. The clinical was all done after that. But I do remember the registry. It was almost like somebody came in with a briefcase handcuffed onto their hand, and everybody was in the room. You got your number 2 lead pencil. You filled in the little dots.
Yeah, my first go at the National Registry was on dot to dot.
And I can, I already tell you I still took my X-ray registry prior to that, and the results took like 5 months to get back from the X-ray registry. The paramedic registry only took about 3 months. So that was progress. And then a lot of years later, I did organ donors, so I took the registry for a transplant coordinator, and that was sit down at the computer, walk out the room, and here's your results. Of course, each time it costs a lot more money also.
Yeah, testing has come a long way. It's changed.
And the training, when I first started, most of the classes, again, were nurses or physicians. And I was extremely fortunate. My early instructors included Jeannie O'Brien, who was one of the authors of PHTLS, Trey Dalton, who has since become a national speaker and lecturer. Judy Janney, who does a lot of stuff at the Fire Academy, is also an author and lecturer. So I'm just lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time and get inspired to stay in EMS and become an instructor. The late Mike Smith was in Iowa, right across the river. And I taught some of his classes. And I thought, this is the way it should be. So training has tremendous involvement since I first started.
So the years that you rode the ambulance, how did that experience from Vietnam kind of translate?
It gave me a lot more awareness because I rode from 80 to, I did 10 years with one volunteer department, 10 years with the other one, dual train fire and EMS. And watching train the early people, some people don't like blood, some people don't like food. And I had gotten a whole lot of anatomy seen, a lot of death and dying, and no gloves. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm looking at some of the slides I sent you. There's one where they're suturing people up. And not only do they not have gowns or masks on, two of them don't even have a shirt on. And that one slide.
I didn't notice the shirt. I did notice the shirt. I did notice the gloves, but I didn't notice the shirt.
Yeah, two of them don't have a shirt. One of them's a doc without a shirt. The guy with the shirt is a dentist. And then there's a medic there, and it's a little boy whose head was broken, lacerated from a water buffalo. But one of the other slides I showed you were IV bottles, glass bottles, glass IV bottles, and there were just sawhorses everywhere. You just set the canvas litter on the sawhorse, and that's how you worked on it. And plenty of tape on the wall. You just ripped it off and put dressing on.
So you have, in some form or fashion, been involved in EMS for 40 plus years.
Yeah, and proud of it. I even have my little note from the registry for my 20 years, and I got one for 30 years. I got a little bit to go before I get the 40-year one, though.
I will say thank you for your military service, but man, thank you. I mean, that's impressive to be able to talk to somebody who's still involved and actively involved in EMS and education and stuff, and being able to share that experience. So, I thank you for just sticking around and hanging out with us, us young folks.
Well, part of the group I worked with some outstanding instructors at Creighton University, and we all went our separate ways. And then we kind of got together at another college and started teaching. And we kept saying, well, where are the up-and-coming people? We're doing all these classes. We had a little cadre of instructors. Well, where are we going to pass the torch along? And there weren't a whole lot of people. It seemed the people don't stay in the business as long, I guess.
And a lot of it is, I've worked at a couple different services across the South after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I will say that, there's only been a handful of people that I have seen in the last 20 years that I've been in EMS that stay past that 15-year mark. There's a few of us that are, at the 20-year mark, and I mean, you probably are one of the very few people that, literally probably, I venture to say there might be 100, 150 people that's hit the 40-year mark that are still in it. And I might be overestimating, and heck, I don't know, maybe I'm way underestimating, but I don't know, I haven't met these people. And it's always impressive to see you guys hang out.
Yeah, the other people I worked with are more retired than I am. But I've still got my license in Nebraska. I've still got one in Iowa, and my Texas is still good for another year or so. So I work real hard to keep them. It's something, once you earn it, you don't want to give it up. I can do this another 2 years.
Yeah, I gotta say, I honestly, and I don't tell too many people, but I almost got out of EMS a couple of years ago, and I found an opportunity to kind of get back into education. I was one of those people, I'd worked in some high volume services, and I kind of got burned out a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And I got a little break there for a little bit. I got back into education, and I see myself probably staying in it for a lot longer now that I've kind of figured out that, and that's the thing, you have to find that happy medium. And I think after doing this for so long that, yeah, you really do.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I stayed in it, I don't know if it's a good news or bad news thing, but I was 19 years old in Vietnam, seeing the things going on in Vietnam. And I managed a coping skill. I almost had face blindness because I remember the vital signs. I remember everything except the person's face and the person's name. And I think that's helped me survive all these years. I'll check my wife completely because someone comes up and talks to me and she'll say, who was that? Why didn't you introduce me? And I say, I got no clue what their name is or where I worked with them or anything. So she's learned early on in the conversation, say, hey, I'm Russ's wife. Where did he work with you?
Well, I'm terrible with names. I really am. And it's really bad in this kind of business to be bad with names. But yeah, faces I can remember. I'm like, I know you from somewhere. I just can't remember where. Well, very cool, sir. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you also.
Yeah, I actually did not do any healthcare whatsoever. I was a firefighter in the Marine Corps, so a little different perspective. And it's always fun to talk to you guys that were in the Army. I talked to Jeremy a little earlier, talking to him about the Air Force, talking to some guys in the Navy. And, it's kind of interesting to see that a lot of people, once they got out of the military, completely stopped healthcare. And then some people kind of transitioned and found parts of EMS that they really like and have kind of migrated towards those from basically based off what their experience was in the military. Jeremy and I were actually talking about how much he really likes critical care because of him getting to do so much critical care type stuff when he was in the Air Force. And I think just from talking to you, it seems like that there were aspects that you liked a little better than others. And I know you spent a number of years doing X-ray, but you've kind of hung in there and gotten back to what you really liked was the actual thinking part.
What I think is great is there's a mechanism now for the military medics to transition much easier. Instead of just, well, you have all this experience, but you got to go to an EMTB program and then work your way. So there's a lot of people that I'm sure give up on it. I've been there, done that. Why am I spending the time and the money for things I can probably teach you to do? I'm sure that might be some of it.
Yeah, it's an equivalent now. It really is. There is an equivalency that you're doing the exact same thing. There's a few extra little skills that they may be able to do outside that level, but they all go through those same levels of training initially. So it does make it a little easier for retention. So I guess here's my question for you. In your 40 years of EMS, and you have spent a lot of time in education, do you like what you're seeing, and do you think that we're going in the right direction with EMS education?
I think it started evolving early on, and I think that was because of the people I worked with. And then as I traveled around, and it was kind of that regression that people haven't quite caught up. I don't know if the Omaha area was way ahead of its time in education or just people. Because even when I went into Oregon doing this for a couple of years, it was kind of like going back in 15 years where the education process was. But we're catching up, we're doing the social media, we're doing things like this, which makes it available for everybody, anywhere, anytime, that's us. And that's necessary. And it's a big advantage getting the international aspect of it, advantage we have with this CME. I think we're going to keep going, and it'd be nice to get the simulated mannequins available for every training program. And need to work on
the social medium kind of, or I guess the internet, if you will, makes it a little harder for us to get some of those aspects in when we talk about education. But you're right. I think that adding in that component of being able to do this through the internet, when we talk about renewing it, I think that brings a benefit to the table.
It makes it a lot more available, even in your full free time, if you have free time, to catch up on maybe not even your mandatory continuing education. You just see some new product or some new procedures, or you get to pursue that on your own time. where you may not have done that in the past. Instead of going in the car and driving 50 miles to listen to someone talk about it.
Yeah, I definitely don't remember that. I don't miss those days. I do remember them, but I don't miss them. So anyway, well, Russ, it's been fun talking with you. Thanks for being on the show, and come back and hang out with me sometime.
All right. Well, hey, my pleasure. You know.
All righty, everyone. Couple of excellent interviews. Enjoyed talking with those fellows today. I have a couple more folks who, due to scheduling and stuff, I'm going to have to talk to a little later this week. And when we post up the weekly episode for you guys to watch, probably see those there. I do want to thank everybody for watching and for just little tweets here and there saying, hey, not really mentioning anybody specific. But again, I always encourage you guys to leave comments with the videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like us. Subscribe. And I always like to hear from you guys to basically just, let us know you like what we're doing. And if you have ideas about maybe future episodes. This next week, I am looking to probably post up a little earlier than Friday. I don't know. I'm traveling, leaving next Friday. Well, maybe it's Saturday. Week from this coming Saturday, the weekend before Thanksgiving. I'll be down in Texas hanging out with you guys at that Texas EMS conference. So come by and see me. I'll be hanging out with the folks at Distance CME at their booth. And hopefully I'll get to see some of you guys. And I would like to just take this opportunity to say thank you to all our veterans. Till next time, guys, this has been a live taping of this week's episode. So you guys had a little bit of a preview, those of you that hung out tonight, of the stuff that's coming this week in this week's episode. So this has been a Medic Live TV. I'm your host, John Newton, and thanks for watching, guys.